thank you so much for coming. Y'all are his friends, and one of the great things that I've enjoyed in my life being his son is so many of you are truly my friends. I don't know if that is really that common, but it is certainly true with many of you. Thank you. Thank you for being my friend. Genuinely, thank you. I love being around you guys. Today I want to share a couple of stories of some things that I've learned from my dad. My dad wrote about, I've heard 40, I've heard 30. Let's call it 40, ministerially speaking, right, babe? And if I'm hearing the Lord properly, my first book be things that I've learned from my dad. Today, the things that I want to speak to you about really are the couple things that were huge on his heart. And Minton, as you remember, and many of you, he would always say, "Stay in the battle." I can remember him standing in the front door of the church around Kanizel and Minton, and many of those guys, and the last thing they do, they have this little handshake, "Stay in the battle, stay in the battle." As well as something that was important to him was ending well. It was kind of windy. It was Lake Livingston, and the white bass were running. And my dad took off work, which he seemed to not mind at all. And it was a little bit windy that day, and we were using these things called Charlie slabs. They were very heavy, mustad hook, a treble hook, and you had to swing that thing. And so the boat was rocking a little bit, and I reeled back. Oh, I'm so sorry, Dad. I hooked him in the nose. And, so I felt absolutely terrible. We go to the emergency room, and the doctor takes it out. Fast forward about 3 to 4 months later, my brother and I were again fishing on Lake Livingston. It was windy again, and the white bass was supposedly running. And so the boat's rocking, and Tony reels back. Got him in the lip. It's absolutely true. You can't make this stuff up. What's even worse is we go to the emergency room and the same doctor is on call. It's absolutely true. And one of those, I'm not sure which one it was, he pulled the typical stories of pulling teeth by the string on that door handle. He used that method to do either the lip or the hook or the nose. And as you might imagine, the hospital is not next door to the lake, and so the bait was still in his mouth as we drove. And I remember sitting in the back seat. Tony, remember we were trying to keep him laughing the second time, and it was dangling from his nose on the lip. It was messed up. And he had to preach the next day. He always did these kind of things on Saturday, which was amazing to me as an adult who also pastored the church, how he could go and take his sons fishing on a Saturday and stand in front of 10,000 people or so each Sunday and continue to, what he would call, knock it out of the park. I don't know how he did it. We say those words. Sometimes we hear those words. I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he did it. To make me feel so important as his son and continue to enable all of these stories that are told today to also be true. I don't know how he did it. My dad wasn't a very good fisherman. That day, evidently, Tony, we were way worse. He would always say when we didn't catch anything, other than repeating what most of the guides would say to us, "You should have been here yesterday." He would say, "You know what? What did he say? It's just good to get out and smell a little fresh air and spend a little time together." He said it every single time, and he meant it. The neat thing about my dad is that he had a great power to forgive. It's true, he never brought that story back up, and it's not because he was mad, it's because he had forgotten about it. My dad had a great ability to forget about wrongs. As you can imagine, being a pastor of a church with 22,000 members, how many opportunities he had to be offended. And he wasn't. He always said, "They can live with it. I can live without it." That is absolutely true with him. Right, Frank? I believe it. I was in 7th or 8th grade. We were at Second Baptist School from 3rd to 8th, pre-First Baptist schools. And Tony and I got in trouble a lot. And, right, buddy? There he goes. And we would be in class and doing our thing and literally trying to behave. And we heard over the intercom, Tim and Tony Bisagno, please come to the office. So we thought we were in trouble. They discovered something we had done that we didn't know about or forgot ourselves. So we walked down the hallway, and I see the back of my dad leaning over this table and signing some paperwork. I'm like, dang, you know, something's up. You know, it can't be good. And so we walked, and Dad had his game face on, and checked us out and walked us down the hallway without saying a word. And Tony and I walked behind him like we soon were in great trouble. He parts the doors of the parking lot, and he steps out about 10 feet into the driveway there in the parking lot, and he goes like this. And he had somehow Jimmy rigged a trailer to the back of an Eldorado. And on that Eldorado, there's Roger. Is that you, buddy? It's hard to see you from the light. I hear you laugh. Thank you for that. Where are you? Amen. And so Dad shows us the motorcycles. And they're brand new. They're Honda Z50s and a 75, which was a little underpowered for him, but evidently that's what somebody told him to buy. And so we go and we ride around Katy under the rice bins of Tom Cardiff, which I don't know if he actually knew about. But I learned a great lesson that day. That day that my dad taught me that fun was much more important than education. He had 3 given doctorates, don't forget. Never went to seminary, but yet they teach his books in seminary as a standard textbook. Attaboy, Dad. Breaking the rules. I love you. Maybe a more redeemable version of that story about the motorcycles is that my dad valued family over his job. Because that day really, to me, as I've thought about it the last 3 or 4 days, wasn't really so much about us. It was about what I learned about my dad, who spent time with his family and loved having fun. Foss West Little League, I don't know, 1976, 77, 78. My brother and I were on the tied for the championship game, championship team. This was the final of Foss West Little League. We were playing the other best team, and here's the baseball. You gotta grasp this. Okay, fast forward, we're in the game. It's now the 9th inning. Okay? There's 4-run difference between the teams, and we're the ones that are behind. The fastest pitcher in the league is absolutely smoking fastballs, and that's all he threw. And it was a full count. And I'm at bat. So for those who maybe don't follow baseball, 9th inning, full count, bases loaded, 4 runs behind. There's nothing else you can add to that list, I don't believe. And I'm at bat. Bases, full count means he throws one more ball and it's about over. One more strike, one more time to hit. And the guy winds up. He starts to wind up, and my dad goes, shh. And I back out of the plate. I'm dragging my bat and lean up against the chain link, and it's my dad, and he's a little busy. What's up? He says, hey, if you hit a home run, I'll give you $100. Needed some more pressure, right? this is a big deal. It's, I don't know, 10 or 12, 13, 14, and $100 in the mid-70s to a kid. I don't care. It's a lot of money. Now I was doing it for that right now. But so he says, just do it. Okay, all right. That's what he did. He just did it. So I step up the plate, and the guy lines up, and I swing as hard as I can, and it flies into center field. That baby is still climbing, still climbing. I'm like, I'm about to hit the first home run of my life. Center field, dead into center field, climbing, and it starts to slow down and comes straight down and hits the top of the fence and bounces back in. By that time, I'm on third base. The best hitter in the league is right behind. His name was Dimitri Payavla. And he hit homers all the time. He's the only guy in the league that could actually hit it over the fence. So I'm like, this is going to be sweet. What that means in baseball is if he hits a home run, we win by a run, and it's a walk-off, and it's over. So Dimitri, pop, dink, goes to second base, throws it on to first, game over. I go in and sit down on the backstop, and I'm kind of thinking about everything that went down, and my dad, I hear a oh my gosh. I lay back on the fence. He's like, hey, I was going to give you $100 for 4 bases, and I'm going to give you 75 for 3. You know what I learned that day? I learned that day, as long as you try, God's going to richly reward you for your effort. I also learned that day, as long as you swing for the fence, whatever you might lack in grunt, God's going to make up for it in grace. That's his story of his life and mine. And whenever my plans don't work out, God always still has a plan. We all know Poppy always had a plan. The last thing I want to say is remind us of this great verse in Hebrews 12:1 about this great cloud of witnesses. My dad always surrounded himself with great faith walkers. Many of you in this room know who you are. It says, therefore, since we have such a great cloud of witnesses to this life of faith surrounding us, run with endurance. That's what my dad did. I think if my dad had a list, I think if I put him on a list, he'd be on that list. That list would have a couple other no-namers on there, like Noah, Abraham, Moses, Sarah, Rahab, Daniel, Shadrach, and the boys. The race that has already been won by those people continues to speak to us, to speak the truth and the principles of what a life of faith looks like, and how to run the race well, and how to run it with patient endurance. I just told my kids the other day, it doesn't matter who remembers how someone started a race. It is how you finish. And my dad finished well. I imagine those great faith walkers, those men of old, as they are called, are to inspire us and remind us of God's goodness. I imagine them running along with us and cheering us, just as my dad did for each of you in this room. He cheered you on, didn't he? Because that's what Dad does. If my dad was standing here right now, as he did on the platform of First Baptist Church for many years, I believe that he would say, hey! Imagine him in that group running along, encouraging us, reminding us of God's goodness. I think he would say, hey, we did it. So can you. Keep going, keep going, keep going. That's what he said to me every day. I believe they would say, God has never, ever let us down. And he will not let you down either. Just do what God says. It works. And trust God's word. Give your life to Jesus. And follow what he says in his word, because every single word is absolutely true. That's what he spent his life telling you. That's what I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing as well. It's an honor to be your son, Dad. Thank you for being the best man that I know. I want to thank my wife, Edie, who took care of my dad as if he were her own. Unbelievable. I can't even tell you how hard she worked. Thank you, Edie. You did so good, so wonderful. I love you so much. I grew my life. I love you so much. So selfless and incredible. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, women. Thank you for believing in my dad. And thank you for letting him lead. Thank you for being his friend. And I want to say thank you, Dad, for being a great dad. And it's my honor to say, well done.